Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer with the Library of Congress Oral History Project here at our wonderful public library of Cincinnati. Dennis Daly, our videographer, is a historian and in charge of this program, and we have the honor and the pleasure to have a wonderful Cincinnatian with us today by the name of Frank Weishaupt. And Frank, what we're going to do is we're going to probe you deeply, and
go right ahead.
You've got a lot. I can tell right away. It's wonderful. Where were you born, Frank?
On McMicken Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, all right. And elementary school?
Camp Washington.
Camp Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, oh boy. Old-time neighborhood.
That's right.
In those days, very, very warm and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I should say so. And then tell us about your family. You have brothers and sisters?
I had a brother. My mother and father were from Germany. My father fought in World War I, naturally on the other side.
Really?
But when he came over here, and the VFW asked him if he fought in World War I, and he says yes. And they said, well, come on in. They didn't ask him what side he was on. So he was just a friend there.
That's very interesting.
But that was my family.
So you grew up with stories of World War I and
Oh, yes.
that era.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was lucky that way too.
Yeah.
But, and of course we all know, World War I today with most people is
Right.
something they just don't understand or know much about. Well, elementary school, Camp Washington, and then how about high school?
Hughes High School.
Hughes High School, great old Hughes.
Right.
Yes, sir. And did you have, were you involved in activities in Hughes High?
I started out in sports there, but our head high school coach preferred to call me Red rather than Frank, so I decided that my sport would be chasing the girls. And I'd spent my entire 4 years at high school dating the girls.
Did you wear yourself out?
Listen, we were gentlemen.
I know.
No, we were gentlemen.
Absolutely. Those times were very
That's
different
right.
from what we know today. Well, that's interesting because Hughes High, I found out early when I came to Cincinnati that Hughes High was an absolutely outstanding high school. And so many of our citizens, male and female, went through Hughes High School. The times, what year were you born?
25.
25, okay, you're just a kid. All right, anyway, 1925, so you were the class of
43.
Okay. Now, as you were going through high school, of course, a lot of things were beginning to change in the world, and one thing that I always like to ask people is, because it's a moment in history for everyone who lived in those times, where were you on December the 7th, 1941?
I was having breakfast at home just before I was going to go to church. I had some things that I was going to do with the pastor.
Okay, and all of a sudden you heard the news over the radio?
Right.
And people said, Pearl Harbor, where's that? And things like that. I'll bet you were a good student. I'll bet you were interested in history and literature and things like that.
Yes. My best classes were English, math, and history.
Good for you. Well, those are basic, of course, and they
Right.
really set you up for your further education. What was the feeling? Now that was on a Sunday, So Monday morning you went to school.
Right.
I'll bet there was a lot of talk.
Oh,
Around
that's all they talked about.
That's all we talked about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were all, most of the fellows were discussing, what branch are we going to be in? What branch are we going to be in?
Yes.
And my goal was already set. I'll have to explain something to you. I was singing on the radio at that time, and my musical director was Bill Kappelhoff, Doris Day's father.
Right.
And he was a second generation removed from Germany. So, and he and I discussed quite a bit.
Now, they were a Price Hill family, weren't they?
No.
Avondale?
No, it was over in Evanston.
Oh, in Evanston?
Yeah.
That is funny because we've had people say Avondale, the Kappelhoffs. Somebody said
No.
Price Hill. Okay.
No. I know where they live because I slept with her.
That's interesting. Okay. Carry on with that.
She was 3 years old and I was 2 years old.
Oh, I'll be darned.
Yes. No, but we discussed the problems about the war, and so he finally said, Frank, I've got a project that I think you would be interested in. And so he said that I would like to have you get familiar with the French landscape. So we had a meeting with the German teacher, Eric Bergman, the senior so-called counselor for boys, Otis Games, and the more or less the advisor and assistant principal, Gus Havlovic. Those gentlemen saw to it that my schedule at high school was such that I could not only attend my classes, but go up into the tower at Hughes High School, and on my study halls, I would be watching film and learning all about the French landscape. Now, where they got these films, I don't know.
For heaven's sake, how
So,
unusual.
They were brainwashing me just to get, so I could say, oh, there's this. So I wasn't like a stranger, you know.
Right.
And
So now you were in the Army and you were in intelligence?
no, I was Navy.
Oh, for heaven's
I went into the Navy only because my dad was sort of a diehard German. He didn't want to see me fighting the Germans.
I see.
So I went into the Navy, and when I got to Great Lakes, as I was telling Dennis, I was transported from Great Lakes down to University of Chicago, where I learned different activities such as, or I even picked up a little bit of Russian while I was there. And I picked up the British code systems, stuff like that that I wouldn't get up at Great Lakes.
Right.
When I got through at Great Lakes, my next place was Quantico. The Marines taught me how to fight dirty, and also how to do certain things that I just don't want to discuss. But this ring right here is a ring that used to be a cameo, and they had me doing some underwater exercises. And this ring accidentally got caught in the drain that I was working nearby, and I was trapped underwater, couldn't get loose. I had to rip. My hand was bloody. I had to rip. I thought I was going to lose a finger. I had to rip it up, and naturally the gold gave way, and I lost the cameo. So later on, I told my mom just to put a plain black onyx in it, because that was sort of a jinx. That
What an interesting bit,
Yeah.
I should say. Now, at this point, you were still in training, right?
Oh, still in training.
At Quantico.
Yeah.
And how did you interact with the Marines?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, they were tough,
Yep.
but I grew up tough. I was sort of like a disciplinarian at Camp Washington School. I got into a lot of fights. You know, somebody might not say something right to a girl, or they might pick on my little brother, and so we end up
Sure.
duking it out. But that's, the Marines really taught me how to be tough. I mean, really tough.
Yes.
They taught me how to fight dirty, so I wasn't afraid of anybody, any size.
Yes. Well, you look wonderful. You're fit and you're in fine shape, which speaks well for your continuing your physical strengthening and so forth through your life, as well as
Right.
your mental. Well, now, so there you were at Quantico. Where did you go from Quantico?
Well, Quantico, I went to New York, where I caught the French liner Le Lejeune. I picked my own ship. I mean, I got red carpet treatment because they knew that I was going to be going into a special unit. So I got on board that ship, got red carpet treatment on board. We went. It was a convoy, and we went across above England, came in Scotland at the Firth of Forth.
Mm-hmm.
I took a train from there down to London, and there's where I met Bill Donovan.
Oh, Wild Bill Donovan.
Wild Bill Donovan.
How about that?
Yeah. And
That must have been an experience.
Oh, that was.
I know that gentleman.
Yeah. And that was the OSS,
Yep.
and he was the one that introduced me to General Patton.
My goodness. Well, you really met. And what was your impression of Patton?
I liked the guy. He and people would laugh about it, but I say he was frank about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever he said, he meant from here.
Straight. Yeah. No nonsense.
Oh yeah.
Well, my goodness, that's just so interesting. I mean, you talk about history and meeting these people. All right, so there you were in London, and what was your orders to be, or what?
Well, I had several meetings with Bill Donovan. We ended up having a group of 24 so-called spies.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only American. We had French, we had Belgium, Dutch, we had a couple of English, and we had a couple of Canadians. They couldn't use a brogue, you know, like an Irishman or a Scotsman. They were kind of hard to use. But we had 2 women, and we got together. We didn't socialize or anything because, let's face it, you don't trust anybody in this business. I did not try to get friendly with any of them. Actually, the only one that really was a so-called buddy was a fellow from Belgium. It was Pierre. Mm-hmm. And the guy was straightforward. I mean, he was definitely against the Germans, so that made me feel real good.
Sure. Now you were all pretty much at the same age?
No.
In your early 20s, or?
Rene was in his early 40s.
Oh my goodness.
The majority of them were in probably their late 20s or early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was the only real young one in the bunch. I don't know why I was, but That's the way it ended up.
Were you the only American?
Yes.
How about that? Wow.
Yeah, because all the training that I had taken, well, it has helped me in my work today, because I'm involved with the police department, the fire department. In fact, if we have a bomb scare or something like that, I'm qualified to go into that building, to check it out, evacuate. In fact, I've got another training class for people the first week of September doing that. I'm not a couch potato.
No, I can see that.
No. But with the group that we had, one of our meetings that we had was to see who was going to be the first to go into France to get information back to the Allies. And they decided that they were going to send 8 on a glider plane.
Now, this would be 1944?
1944.
Okay.
This was May.
So before...
Oh, yeah.
Before Normandy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this glider plane was towed into France and dropped. And as soon as the plane landed, the Germans were waiting and killed all 8 of them. That told us right then and there was a spy in our system. So one of our OSS was a spy.
Isn't that something?
And it took quite a while to find out who it was.
But you did, huh?
Yeah, I almost lost my arm over it. But this was after the Battle of St. Lo. Something funny happened at St. Lo. I was reporting to General Patton, and some idiot ran over my bicycle. And when I'm talking up there at Mother of Mercy, this one veteran stands up and says, "Frank, I'm the guy that ran over your bike." He says, he says, if I ever saw a bike, he said, I would run over the bikes.
For heaven's sake.
Now, isn't that something?
That is most unusual.
Yeah. Yeah, Woody Forrester. Yeah, that son of a gun. He was a supply driver for the Army, but when he saw a bike, he would run over it. Well, fortunately, General Patton had a special interest in me, so that he had a spare bike, and so I had the spare bike.
Sure. Now, you were Navy.
I was technically Navy, but I was assigned to the OSS.
I see. Did you have a rating or a rank?
Well, that's it. I was a petty officer second class in the Navy.
Yeah.
But when I met Patton, he said that won't do. So he had the Navy promote me to a lieutenant. He said that opens the doors a little bit better than a petty officer. So I was a lieutenant throughout the war.
I knew some petty officers were better than lieutenants.
Well, I know that, but you know, you're talking to the brass.
You betcha.
And so General Patton said that he always called me Frank, not Red or anything like that, but he called me Frank, and I would always report to him, not to any subordinates.
Really?
Yes.
Right to the top.
Yep.
Now, this is when he was head of the, what, the First Army, Second Army, Third Army?
Third Army.
Third Army.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting is when we landed on D-Day, I was in the 3rd wave. First 2 waves were bottled up. And we lost a few of our boys or people because of we were supposed to have a high tide that morning. We had a low tide. And if you know how those landing craft try to get to shore, they can't. So we were waiting. I had to take my shoes off where I carried my gun. In fact, this is a type of boot that I wore with my civilian clothes, and I carried my 25 Beretta in this boot, and a spare clip in this here.
How about that?
And I had a holster where I had a 6-inch knife back here on my neck.
My goodness.
Oh, I was armed.
You were.
The knife was my father's in World War I.
My goodness sakes. German knife.
But when we landed, it was sort of hectic. So we veered west of the Normandy because everything was bottled up. So we were able to land a little closer to shore, but I carried everything on my neck, and my bike was overhead. And so when I got there, we all scattered.
Oh, you carried your bike as well as your
Oh yeah.
backpack?
I didn't have a backpack.
Oh,
No, I was going to pick up things. My expense account was carte blanche. Anytime I wanted money, I just saw the purser at the Third Army, got what I wanted, took off. No, I had it nice.
but they trusted you. They knew that you were.
So, but the thing is, one of the first things that I did when I landed was sort of a heartwarming thing. It was one of the first persons that I saw that was wounded on the side of the road as I was pedaling was a German soldier. Now the French people ignored him, and he hollers out, "Comrade, comrade." I saw him, and I saw he was wounded. I got out my first aid kit that I had on my bike, and I patched him up. Because I didn't know who was watching.
Sure.
If I let him go, they would have said he's not on our side. So I patched him up, and he said, "Danke schön," and I said, "Auf Wiedersehen." And I took off, and I headed up toward Le Havre, and the British had just strafed the red light district of Le Havre. I guess they figured there was a lot of Germans and prostitutes there, so they got that. Well, I found this little 2-year-old girl. Damn it, it hurts me.
Had she been abandoned, or she lost her parents or something? Or?
Her mother was dead right next door.
Oh my goodness sakes.
God. I picked her up, and I took her to the church up the street. Sister Annette took her. I hate this.
Yeah.
It gets worse every time.
I understand. Yeah.
Took care of her, and I even told Sister Annette that if this child does not have any parents or any relatives, that when the war was over, I would take her back to my mother, because my mother always wanted a little girl.
How about that? Oh my.
So I kept in contact, but I kept riding around on my bike. My main concern was trying to get information from the Germans. Every time I saw a few Germans at a restaurant or a bar, I would go in there and I would talk to the owner and ask if I could sing a song or something like that. And he'd say, "Sure." So somebody would grab an accordion, and we'd start, and I would start singing, and I would sing German songs because I grew up
Lily Marlene.
Oh, gosh, I knew all the songs. But anyway, I would sing that, and then the Germans would ask me to sing a different song, and I would say, okay, so I would sing a song if I knew it. And then, just when I thought I had their confidence, I would sing, Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles in der Welt. Oh, God, they thought that was fantastic. So I'm a comrade.
Now, tell me, what were you wearing? Civilian clothes?
Oh, I was dressed in Swiss clothing.
Swiss.
Yes, I was
Neutral.
neutral. I had an uncle, an Italian uncle, who was supposed to be my guardian in Bad Ragaz. He owned a casino, which was the British sector of Switzerland. And so that if the Germans ever wanted to check up on me, my Italian uncle, his name was Florian Sparandione. He was married to my father's sister, Marie. So,
My goodness.
oh yeah.
What a connection.
Well, you know, when they had the Battle of the Bulge, you know where I was?
Nope.
I was in Bad Ragaz. It was too cold to ride my bike. There was snow on the ground, and the Germans lobbed a few shells at the Americans lobbed a few shells at that, and then they would take the week off. There was nothing going on. So I had it nice and cozy with my uncle in Bad Ragaz, and I sang with the orchestra.
My goodness, in Switzerland.
Yeah. I spent Christmas and New Year's there.
For heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Well, you were fortunate. Very
Hey,
fortunate.
I had nothing, nobody telling me what to do. I was freelance.
Isn't that something? What an incredible experience. My goodness.
Yeah, and in fact, I had one occasion where I walked into a restaurant where there were some Germans, plus a Gestapo agent, and the woman that behind the bar saw me. She let out a scream and passed out. Well, when they revived her, we found out that her boyfriend was a German, looked just like me. And I thought that, I said to the people right away, I said, looks to me like my father's been around here. You know, and so they laughed it off. The Gestapo agent didn't. He took me outside to interrogate me because they just didn't believe all this.
Suspicious.
And so he was twisting my arm, trying to make me confess that I was somebody else. And I reached up here, got my knife, and stuck him. Then I had to take off because if I ruined that nice leather coat of his. But that's how I got away from him.
Isn't that something?
On another occasion, some German soldiers were hitting on this one waitress, and I had been singing at this place, and I was winking at her all the time, just like being any young man would do.
Flirting.
And so she came up to me and she asked me if I would walk her home, and I thought, wow, okay. She says she's afraid that these two soldiers were gonna want to get her. So I said, okay, I'll walk her home. As we were going out, the Germans jumped us. The one German held me at bay with his gun, while the other one took her, laid her down on the grass, and she was fighting him all the time. But this fellow wasn't watching me close enough, so I got my knife out, slit his throat, walked over to the other soldier that was on top of her, and I had my pistol, and I blew his brains out, and then I walked her home.
My goodness.
But at the Battle of the St. Lo was where which was the worst part of it. This one French SS agent we had mentioned at Patton's office, you know, that he would like to meet with me and Pierre. So I said, okay, I would meet him at this one farmhouse. Well, look, at this farmhouse, I was going to get a home-cooked meal from this farmer's wife. And so Pierre and I decided we would cut some wood for him while we were waiting for the food. And they had wine for us and everything, so we were drinking wine and chopping wood. And all of a sudden, I didn't see the soldier come out of the barn, but he threw a hand grenade at us. And throwing the hand grenade at us, Pierre shoved me out of the way, so I ended up behind the wood pile. But at the same time, I got shrapnel in my arm. Pierre died instantly. While I'm laying there, half stunned, the Frenchman comes out of the supposedly our ally. He comes running out and he tells the German soldier, "Wunderbar, ausgezeichnet." And they came over toward me, and I had reached for my pistol, and I couldn't use my right arm, so I took my pistol and I shot them both right here, because a .25 caliber doesn't do any damage here, but it will up here. Mm-hmm. So I eliminated both of them. The Frenchman, the farmer's daughter comes running out because her boyfriend was just died, and I held the gun on her while she wrapped up my arm. Mm-hmm. I got my bike, went back to Patton's headquarters, and he saw what happened, so he wrote out a note, had his driver drive me up to Camp Philip Morris, which is right outside of Le Havre. The note said, "You will save this arm," because back in those days, anybody that got an injury like this, the medics would just automatically chop the arm off.
Sawbones. Yeah. My goodness, Frank, those are amazing experiences. And you were such a young man.
Yeah. From
Cincinnati, Ohio. That is just incredible. Well, going back, just briefly, it's interesting. You went in on the third wave.
Yes.
And we who read the history know what that means, because, as you pointed out, the first two were so badly hung up, and tragically, we lost so many.
You should have seen the bodies floating on. Oh. The water was red.
Oh my goodness.
The beach was red.
Yeah.
And bullets were flying all over the place.
Oh my goodness.
Now we lost 6 other so-called OSS members then.
Did you? Really?
Oh yeah. In fact, one of them, as our crafts were coming in, he peeked over the edge to see what was going on.
Yeah.
And
got
it right away. Yeah. Everybody was told to, stay low.
Stay down.
He didn't do it.
Stay down.
And but I'm the only one surviving out of the 24.
Is that so?
Right.
Is that so? So you can't even have a reunion?
No.
Nobody around a reunion with?
Another sad part about it was, when the war was over, the Navy said, that I couldn't go home right away because I was so young and I didn't have enough points and everything like that.
Oh, goodness. All the things you've done.
Yeah, and so they said, we're going to put you on shore duty, so that my job, this is so asinine. I was supposed to check the officers' liquor supply on board ships to see whether or not they had too much alcohol. And if they had too much, I always carried a couple of other fellows with me. I usually recruited a couple of the Niccolo Deuce Port Battalion. They were the black workers that we had, and they just liked Mr. Frank. So if they had too much booze, I would always hand this to the Niccolo Deuce Port Battalion boys, and they would say, I would say, now make sure this gets back to the enlisted men's bar. Yes, sir, boss. Yes, sir. Half of it never got there, you know that. But I didn't care because I thought it was a stupid rule for me to have to worry about.
What a waste of talent. And
I know, and I was stuck there for almost 5.5 months.
Good heavens.
Yeah.
Now, this was in France.
Yeah.
My word.
Now the ones that went home ahead of me, they told me that when you get out, don't question your discharge papers. They said if there's anything wrong, just don't say nothing because they will hang on to you for another couple of weeks while they check it out. So I made my mind up that he had down here that this was Francine Weishaupt from the waves. I wouldn't care. I just wanted to get out and go back to school. But it was, well, in fact, the day that I was going to leave, I had picked out a French war bride ship to come back on. Here again, I still had my own authority on what to do. Because I was going to take the little girl with me.
Oh, yes.
Sister Annette and I had planned that I would take her in a bag. Now, what we did was she gave her some kind of a sedative that put her to sleep. Well, it took a little bit longer to get on board than we had anticipated. So when I got on board, somebody behind me had bumped my bag, and the little girl cried out.
Oh, my goodness.
So the MPs and the Shore Patrol were all right away. They grabbed that bag. And since I was no longer a lieutenant, I didn't have much choice, you know. So, because I had planned to take the little girl out of the bag and have one of the war brides take care of her while we went back to the States on this nice cruise ship. Well, it didn't work out that way. Now, if I'd have thought about it, I would have had the war bride take the little girl on board.
Oh, yes.
Then I would have got away with it.
My word.
But that's hindsight.
Were there a lot of French women that came back?
Oh, God, that ship was loaded.
Is that so?
Oh, yeah. They were a dime a dozen.
You didn't have a sweetheart, though.
No. In fact, I'll tell you, while I was in Switzerland, I had my uncle fixed me up with a Swiss doctor who offered his twin daughters to me if I would marry one of them. He would give me $10,000 to take her to the States.
Bring her to the States, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. Twin daughters. In fact, I communicated with one of them and, right up to the time that I got engaged here in the States. In fact, I still got her letter.
Isn't that something? My goodness sakes. Well, the curious thing is that they reverted you back to second-class petty officer?
Yes, because the Navy decided that it was in the Stars and Stripes. It's all authenticated. They came right out and said, any wartime promotion is null and void. That was all in Europe. I don't know what they did out in the Pacific, but in Europe, everything was null and void.
Isn't that something?
Well, that infuriated me.
Oh, yeah. What a dirty thing to happen to you after all you'd gone through and all you had contributed. Your work there in France among the Germans and everything. And you were there with Gestapo people
Oh, yeah,
and the SS,
yeah.
the worst
But-
bunch of the Wehrmacht.
You should have known me because, well, Bob could tell you, I get along with everybody. Isn't that right, Bob? No, seriously.
I believe that. No, I believe that.
I can joke with anybody. I
Yep.
can make friends with anybody. And the Gestapo, I was so cocky. Well, hey, 19 years old.
Good heavens.
You
Just
can't get any
imagine.
cockier than I was.
I know, you were
And-
just a kid.
And I could talk to them, joke with them, and
Yeah.
I just got away with it.
That's something.
Plus the fact that I had my passport and everything. And
Well, now, you had to make out reports and so forth, didn't you, for Patton, or was it verbal?
we wrote it all out.
You wrote it all?
Yeah, I never signed anything.
Yeah.
Never signed a thing.
Do you have those reports or anything?
I don't have it. The only thing I have at home right now is I had ventured into Germany at the close of the war, right before the end of it, and I was in this one British. They had set up an office with their teletype. They loved their teletype machines, okay? And the teletype machine started running, and all of a sudden it said, the Germans have surrendered, but don't pass this on until the top brass in London gets this information. I tore that off and put it in my pocket. So nobody in the area got it. I've got it at home.
Isn't, you
Yes.
got the original?
I got the original right off the
teletype message.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, among all the things you've done, the interesting thing that pervades is your brain was working all the time. I mean, you were not being fooled by anybody. Were you betrayed at any time?
The only time I was betrayed was by Rene, the Frenchman.
Oh yeah.
I didn't trust him from day one because he kept telling me I should go in this area. I should go in this area. He would leave notes with Patton. Have Frank, go this area. Patton didn't tell me nothing. He just left me do it because I was able to give him a lot of information by just talking to all. If I saw troop movements, fine, I passed that on. If I got information from the soldier, listen, when a German drinks, he talks his head off. And if you're feeding him a beer and asking him, well, where are you going next? And you'd be surprised, they'll say, oh, we're getting ready to move to this area.
For heaven's sake.
That's how you get the information.
Of course.
And when you sing songs for those Germans,
They loved it.
they loved it. I was a comrade.
My goodness, Frank, it's just amazing, and I know you've got 1,000 more stories. I wish we had more time to talk about it.
No,
Well, now, how would you like to kind of wind this down? You got back, you got aboard a ship at Le Havre, did you?
got Le Havre, went back to, landed in New York, and
About 12 days across the ocean?
it was 11 days.
11 days.
11 days. And we ended up, I caught a train, took me right up to Great Lakes.
Back
I had
to
a-
Great Lakes.
Yeah, I hated to go up there again, but I went up to Great Lakes and got discharged immediately because they had nothing. All they had was that I served in Europe.
Yes,
That's all.
yeah.
And so that was fine. I didn't want to elaborate because then they would have had to get, and you're not going to get the information from the OSS.
No. Were you sworn to secrecy?
Yes, sir?
That's what I thought. Still?
Well, not anymore. Not anymore. I was, the year 2000, I could talk without getting in trouble.
For heaven's sakes.
But if you want to know something, when I first went into Europe, I decided after the little child, I dropped her off at the church. I went west, seeing if I could find more Germans coming. I saw some Germans coming, and I realized that Montgomery was coming down. Mm-hmm. So I rode up to Montgomery, because I had met that son of a gun in London also. I went to his office, and I said, I want to see the marshal. They said, he can't be disturbed. And I said, why not? They said, he's having tea. It was tea time.
Oh, my word.
So I said, oh, to hell with it, and I turned around and left. I told Patton. He says, use your own judgment. He smiled the way he always smiled, and he says, use your own. The biggest drawback that Patton had was his, what was his name? Can't think of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
The other general.
Bradley.
Yeah.
Omar.
Bradley. That son of a gun was so jealous.
Of Patton.
Yeah. And to this day, I will stand on a Bible and swear to the Almighty that accident that Patton had in Berlin was not an accident. That was an assassination between Bradley and Montgomery.
No kidding. That's what you feel. Isn't that so? Well, Montgomery was a very questionable character.
He is an asshole.
Yeah.
And Bradley wasn't much better.
Isn't that something?
But he was a yes man for Ike.
Yeah.
And he was hurt because they were grooming Patton to go to the Pacific.
Sure.
Bradley wanted that. And Bradley was going to be stuck with Ike.
Yeah. And Bradley was made out to be the all-American boy from the farmland, that sort of a person.
No, I wouldn't trust him.
Isn't that something? Yes. Well, that is just amazing. Did you ever meet General McAuliffe by any chance? He was the guy at...
Yeah, at the Battle of the Bulge.
Yes.
You know, I never met him, but some of the fellows that were there talked about him. In fact, Bob and I had just gone to a memorial for one of the fellows that was working out with us that had just died. He had gotten frozen feet in the Battle of the Bulge. Real nice guy. We call him the Candy Man. But he spoke very highly of McAuliffe.
Yeah.
But at the Battle of the Bulge wasn't much of a battle. It was just, they just tossed shells back and forth.
Well, yeah.
The weather was all against
so
that.
Terrible. Yeah.
That was the wrong time of the year.
Yes.
But,
The only thing the terrible thing that happened in the Hurtgen Forest, of course, where the Germans dressed in American uniforms and then slaughtered Americans.
Now I wish I had been in that area, because I think I could have spotted something like that.
I'll bet you could.
Because I was trained.
Yes.
I would have loved to have been there,
Yes.
but it was not. I just didn't think that area was going to be the next on the list. In fact, my whole life, I always try to prepare for what's coming down the road, like in my construction. I always was figuring on 2 or 3 weeks ahead, so I wouldn't have any delays.
Right.
And I was doing the same thing here.
Right.
I was thinking about what might be coming from here, so I'll go up in this area and check it. I missed that.
Well, you didn't miss very much then, but because of what your wonderful story. Did you ever hear anything from the little French baby that grew up?
Yep. 22 years later, I went to see her get married up in Ontario.
Is that so?
Yep.
My word.
Yep. In fact, she got married 4 days after my youngest daughter was born.
Well, I'll bet she adored you because she knew the story.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, she didn't remember her
No, she
being
doesn't.
2 years old.
No, but she remembered. She had my name and everything, and
Yes.
I wrote to the church, to see how she was going.
Did the church keep her and
Oh,
protect
yeah.
her? Sister Annette? and
Yeah,
so
they
forth?
kept her.
Isn't that something? You saved that life.
But I just wish I could have brought her home to my mom.
Yeah, I know. Well, Frank,
She'd have been spoiled rotten.
oh my goodness, I should say so. I should say so. And in America, it would have
Yeah.
been a great experience for her. Is she still alive?
No,
No.
died in a car accident.
Oh, in Canada?
Yeah.
My goodness sakes, how ironic. Just imagine to survive all that. Oh my golly. Well, now, you got back to the States, you got discharged at Great Lakes, and then what?
Then I went to hell. I went to UC, got my engineering degree, met my first wife, which was worse than war. My second wife was also worse than war. That's it.
And there you are.
But I get my golf in now, and I mess around with these guys, and
Well, that's wonderful.
I'm happy.
Well, my goodness, and you're so fit, and you're in wonderful, wonderful condition.
Tell that to that guy.
I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. But I thought that was also interesting about your shoes, being able to carry the Beretta in one shoe and your knife in the other, or
No.
your ammunition
Yeah.
clip. And that's real spy stuff. And the knife in
Yeah.
in your back. My goodness.
And you want to know something else that was funny?
Sure.
My mail all went to the Navy PO
Yeah.
in London.
Yeah.
And from there it was transferred to the Third Army, and I got it. Now, I never communicated with my mom and dad because of the war, but I had, probably 15 or 20 girls that were writing to me. That took care of my correspondence.
But your parents never got letters from you?
Well, I tried to write to them, but they didn't write to me, so I thought, the hell with it.
Okay.
I won't write to them. And I did get a letter from my mother at the end of the war, and wanting to know when I'm coming home. And she says that I was going to be needing some clothes because my brother had taken all my clothes because he had got married and decided that since they hadn't heard from me, maybe I was dead. And so he took all my clothes. Oh, yeah. So if my brother wears my clothes, I don't want them again. So I decided, when I got that letter, I decided to go to London, where the Army and the Navy had a PX. And I got myself 4 Arrow shirts, because I was always a shirt and tie man like you.
Right.
Just recently, I've gone into junk like this.
Well, you look wonderful. And now, then you went into the construction business
Yeah,
here in Cincinnati.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. First I went with my dad because he had been hit in the head with a sledgehammer by one of his employees, and had to have steel plates put on both sides. So I had to take over the business for 6 years. But I got tired of that because every winter, around the latter part of October, my parents would always fly to Germany and stay there till April. Because Frank was going to take care of the business.
I see.
After 6 years, I got sick and tired of that.
They still had relatives over there.
Oh, sure.
Big family. What part of Germany?
Stuttgart.
Stuttgart, yeah.
Plus, we had relatives in Switzerland.
Yes, of course. And that Italian connection.
Oh, yeah.
What a life. My goodness. This is just absolutely amazing, Frank. Well, then, when did you last see Patton?
I saw Patton in Berlin. I went there and I saw him just once because I knew the war was over and I wanted to say goodbye to him one more time. So I went to see him, and I would say it was probably about 4 weeks later, I read about it in the paper.
Being killed. Well, wasn't the story that we got that it was an auto accident or something?
Well, what it was, these two British soldiers were in a lorry on a side street, and as Patton limo was coming by, I call it a limo because back in those days,
Command cars.
it was like a command car. But he was sitting in the back and his driver was in the front. But he was on the right side.
Yeah.
This truck comes barreling right out of the alley and just creams the car on Patton's side.
Yeah.
He was in a coma for several days.
Yes, yes.
And I went to see the area. There was no way for that to be an accident.
Is that so?
No. That was
What did you think about the movie, Patton?
the movie Patton, I think George C. Scott hammed it up a little bit because Patton wasn't that type of guy.
Well,
But you know, the movies, they always change people around.
oh sure, romanticize this and that and so forth.
But they made another movie, and I can't remember what the name of it was, where they showed the death of Patton. And I know I'm not dreaming this, but he was in a coma for such a long period of time that they dragged it out in the movie.
Yes, yes.
But
Well,
I
that-
can't remember. It must not have been a very good movie because nobody heard about it.
Yeah, I don't know about that one either. In Cincinnati, you've always been in construction?
Mm-hmm.
That was your business life.
Yeah.
And you went to college on the GI Bill,
Well, yeah, partially.
UC?
Yeah, I went to work for our co-op with most of the time at UC because I went to work for General Motors at Fisher Body Norwood,
Oh, yes.
and I was a supervisor there,
Okay,
and that helped me because I wanted to get married,
of course.
and so at first I wanted to be a doctor, but when I met my future wife, I talked to my uncle here in Cincinnati, and he said, well, why don't you switch to engineering, because he says you like that too. So I did, and I majored in civil, mechanical, and civil and mechanical engineering. The one thing I was weak on was electrical engineering. I could screw up a screwdriver faster than anybody else.
Well, you have had an amazing, amazing life, and to learn about it and the secret way that you were living in those days, the role that you were playing. You were an actor.
That's right.
Sure, you were an actor because you were playing several roles of deceit and so forth and
Oh,
so
yeah.
on.
But I trusted no one.
Right, right. That's just absolutely amazing. And golly, Moses, we're almost ready to run out of time here. I'm sorry that...
You know, the one thing about it, though, is I never got a good night's sleep the entire time I was there.
well, you always had to be aware, didn't you?
Yeah.
You didn't dare conk out and
No.
something could have happened to you.
I couldn't get drunk.
Yeah,
I had to watch my back at all times.
sure.
Uh,
Even women you had to be careful of.
well, yeah, you have to be careful. They're the enemy.
Well, Frank, this has been a tremendous experience, and I know that your friends and your family, you get a DVD of this from this interview. Copy is sent to the Library of Congress in Washington Archives.
You mean you're not going to edit this?
This is it.
You got to be kidding.
This is it, kid.
Oh, gee.
And
Why didn't you warn me?
And the archives of this library will have a copy of it. And it'll be on the web, so anybody in the world can tap in and see about Frank Weishaupt.
Oh, God.
How about that? Well, you're a great American, and I mean that sincerely. And we thank you for all the great stuff that you've done. It's an honor and a pleasure. And
Same here.
I hope our paths cross again.
It will.
Thank you.